Okay, so we've got the tax rebate. Some people are going to spend it or have already spent it. Why is that happening? What are the reasons for that? Well, there's two reasons, and whether or not this is beneficial kind of depends on which reason we have going on. Now, there are what we call behavioral reasons, right? So here we kind of stray from economics strictly, and we go more into psychology. So if you're more interested in a little bit more in psychology or sociology, the behavioral explanation is going to sound much better. And so what's going on is that, the budget part is not changing. So that's just something that is true, right? So when T goes down, I send out these tax rebates, future taxes have to go up, either directly with higher taxes or indirectly with the inflation tax. But we know from the consumer's budget perspective, the present value of taxes hasn't really changed in that. So it hasn't changed in that sense at all, right? We have fewer today, but more in the future. So in theory, consumption doesn't change. You save the tax cut. But the behavioral explanation says that potentially consumers are inconsistent in how they discount the future. So what we've always done so far is we've modeled our consumption like this, right? So I have current consumption and future consumption, C and C prime, and beta was my discount, right? So I still put weight on the future consumption, but not quite as much as current consumption. That's just a human nature, right? I'm going to get more value out of having the drink today as opposed to the value I'm going to place on a drink 10 years from now, right? You give me the option, I'm going to take the drink today, and that will bring me more utility than a drink in 10 years from my current perspective. So that has always been there, a function in economics, right? So what behavioral sort of says is that I'm inconsistent, right? So that this utility function is how I should make choices, but I become inconsistent or a little bit more impatient by adding this extra term here, delta. And what that does, it's less than 1, and it makes my discount on the future bigger than perhaps what it should be. And so, if you said, okay, beta was 0.9, it says that I should put, 0.9 weight on my future consumption. And if that was true, and that was the only difference, I get the tax rebate, I save it, and my consumption doesn't change. Now, if I have some other delta, let's say that's also equal to 0.9, that means I'm going to discount the future more heavily, and that makes me more impatient. It puts some more pressure on my current consumption relative to future consumption. And so in this world, right, I get the tax rebate, and I might say, well, I'm gonna spend some of that now because I don't care about the future as much as what I should, right? So you increase current consumption when you get the tax rebate. Basically because you're too impatient, right? So maybe I know that future taxes are going to go up, or I don't know. But either way, I don't take account for that, right? So another behavioral type explanation is that consumers don't fully understand that their future taxes are going to go up, right? So I don't know exactly what my budget constraint is, and so I don't adjust accordingly. And so there's very good reasons, and in fact, this is going to happen for a group of the population, right? They're going to get the tax rebate and they're going to spend it simply because they're too impatient, or they don't know enough about what is going on with the budget constraint to understand that they should be saving this, right? And so, I think that's a good explanation of some of the behavior that goes on. Now, here's where I think it's interesting, is that this doesn't really change the policy implication. So yes, some consumers are going to spend the tax rebate, even though they shouldn't. And that's the key part, right? They still shouldn't. So I'm making effectively a bad decision here. And although I can have an effect on current consumption as the government, if that was my goal, the reason I'm doing it is because I'm effectively tricking consumers, right? I'm saying, well, okay, here's some extra income, $1,200. Don't worry about it. Just go and spend it. And then they go and spend it, and then I come back later and I say, well, no, I was just kidding. We got to pay for this stuff, and so I'm going to need the $1,200 back with interest, right? So that's ultimately, over the lifetime of the consumer, going to make them worse off. I shouldn't have spent the tax cut, and I did. So in that sense, if we take the behavioral explanation, this tax rebate is a really bad idea. It shouldn't affect consumption, but it does affect consumption. And in that case, I don't want to do the tax rebates. So that is the behavioral explanation of what's going on there. So a very quick one. I didn't obviously get into the details. If you are interested in that kind of thing, obviously we have a behavioral economics course, and you can learn a lot more of the details of how these decisions play out. We just kind of did it more heuristically, just thinking about some of the main ideas. So next, what I want to look at is, in terms of credit market frictions, what is going to be going on? What are those exactly, and how does that affect the policy implications here?